Hello and welcome to Shoot the Hostage with me, Dan, and my partner, Sarah. We're a movie podcast who talks about a different film each week based on a theme. We do swear and we do spoil the featured movie, so only ever listen if you've seen the film or you don't care too much about spoilers. If you're a regular listener, you can just skip forward until you hear the intro music because you've heard all of this before. But if you are new to the show and you do enjoy what you hear, there are a couple of things you can do to help support the show. Firstly, make sure that you're subscribed on your podcast player so you get notified when new shows drop on Mondays. You could rate us 5 stars on Spotify, which couldn't be easier. You just hit the star icon below the show's artwork. Or if you have a spare few minutes, we'd love it if you could submit a review wherever you listen. Make sure you come follow us at STH_pod on social media. We are active on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And lastly, the biggest thing you can do to help is tell a friend about the show. So that's about it. That's enough preamble from me. Over to me and Sarah for this week's episode. Snake eyes. We're here to talk about some snake eyes.
Is that a song?
We are going to talk about the Nicolas Cage movie Snake Eyes, not the G.I. Joe spin-off Snake Eyes, because I'll have to remember to put the year in the title of this episode, because some people might think we're going to be talking about the G.I. Joe spin-off Snake Eyes.
Despite Nicolas Cage not appearing in that one, to my knowledge anyway.
Have you seen it?
No. So I can't say with any certainty that he's not in it.
You don't know?
I don't know.
It's just like the flat earthers, isn't it? They go, we have never seen the world round in space, so we can't be certain. We've never seen the moon landings with our own eyeballs.
But even the flat earthers who have gone far enough up and seen a curve, they've gone, yeah, but... So that's not the best excuse.
Yeah, there's always a reason.
There'll be somebody who watched Snake Eyes, saw that Nicolas Cage was in it, and still denies that Nicolas Cage is in it.
Yeah. The 1998 one, that's part of the G.I. Joe franchise as well.
Yeah. Nicolas Cage deniers.
That was the first live-action G.I. Joe movie before the Channing Tatum one.
Yeah.
With Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the bad guy?
Yes.
Oh, that's a spoiler, I think, for that movie.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry.
It was also a terrible film, so...
Yeah. Don't worry, it's garbage.
That's fine. Yeah.
Don't bother. We've saved you. We've saved you some work. Like, you should be thanking us, really. Mm-hmm. So, we're continuing my Nicolas Cage season.
We
if
sure
you
are.
haven't guessed already. This is episode 4 of 8, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Snake Eyes. We're in 1998 now because we're going chronologically. We did 96, 97, 98.
Yeah.
We're going to have a bigger jump for the next episode, but we'll get to that later.
He had a good run, didn't he, in the late 90s?
Yeah, he had a really great run. Obviously, go back and listen to our last 3 episodes. But yeah, absolutely brilliant run. He had another film out in 1998. Do you know what it was?
Oh, God.
Do you want a clue?
It wasn't... 8mm was later, wasn't it?
Yes. I want to say maybe that was 99.
Yeah. Bringing Out the Dead? When was that? Was that 2001?
Oh, that was around about 99 again, I think. 99, maybe 2000.
Then I don't know.
Had Meg Ryan in it.
Oh, God, not City of Angels.
City of Angels. I thought that movie was about maths because I thought it said angles. My mum...
I would not have admitted to that.
My mum loves City of Angels. She thinks she loves it. She really enjoys that movie, but it is garbage.
I feel like there's a Goo Goo Dolls song on the soundtrack and clips from the movie featured in the music video, and I saw that a lot back in the day.
Have you seen the film City of Angels?
I have. I saw it once when it came out, and I've never revisited it, which should tell you my thoughts on that movie.
I saw it more than once, but it wasn't my choosing. I hated it when I first saw it, and then continued to hate it whenever it got put on. And then I realised I can just remove myself from a situation.
I was going to say, unless your mum had you like strapped to a chair, Clockwork Orange style, you didn't have to watch it more than once.
Yeah, well, she told me not to talk about that. So, yeah, maybe we should move on.
Okay.
So we're in 1998. We're at another Brian De Palma movie, aren't we?
Is that how we're going to say it?
Brian De Palma movie.
Isn't it De Palma?
No, it's De Palma, sweetheart.
Is it?
It's yes.
Are you gaslighting me?
I don't even know what gaslighting means.
Oh, there we go. Yes, so you are gaslighting me. I see. It's such a mind fuck living with you.
I know it is. Imagine being in my brain.
Oh, no, thank you.
It's our second Brian De Palma movie.
Mm-hmm.
Our first being Carrie, which was in your season
Yes.
of Coming of Age.
Outstanding film.
Last season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we've done two
on the bounce.
De Palma movies on the bounce, yeah.
Mm.
I think I saw Snake Eyes at the cinema. What about you?
I didn't see it at the cinema. I definitely would have rented it, probably on VHS.
Yeah.
Or maybe DVD? 98?
It would have been just DVD, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe just. I feel like we were still renting VHSs in 1998, though.
Yeah.
My mum had...
Give me that sweet big box.
Yeah. My mum had City of Angels on VHS in one of those smaller... You know the ones that were just slightly smaller than the average VHS?
Yeah.
And it had the really tiny lip and it was black.
Oh, I hated them.
I didn't mind them, but it's annoying that they don't match up with the others.
Yeah. You hate the fact that I have DVDs and Blu-rays next to one another.
I can't. I cannot sanction that. Yeah, so I think I saw this once at the cinema. I don't think I liked it very much from memory. So it'd be interesting it was interesting to revisit it the other night, and it'll be interesting to talk about it, especially that we've recently covered a Brian De Palma movie. And he's definitely a filmmaker, I think we discussed in Carrie, that I've sort of come around to of recent years more than I did back then. I certainly didn't appreciate him very much. I don't think I really knew who he was up until, the mid-2000s or something. But it'd be interesting to sort of go through some of the things and techniques that he uses in this film and sort of compare it to other things.
I think he's one of the rare directors, I don't know, would you call him an auteur? Like he's definitely got a very distinct look and like set of techniques that he revisits in almost every one of his films. And I think maybe the first time I ever watched Snake Eyes, I probably was, I mean, obviously I've always been obsessed with movies, but I would have been more of a casual viewer back then, whereas now I can sort of watch films and appreciate them for the craft and not just the storytelling. So my experience watching it this time was very different to the first time. Yeah,
I think the same for me.
Okay.
I definitely had that kind of eye where I was like, oh, okay, this is Brian De Palma.
Yeah.
What camera angles are we going to see? Are we going to do some split screen? Spoilers, we do.
Of course.
Obviously. So yeah, I certainly, and we'll get into it, I'm sure, but I certainly did appreciate it way more this time and quite liked it, I'll be honest with you. It's not perfect.
It's certainly not perfect.
It has its problems, but I thought it was all right actually.
Yeah,
and I don't know if I was really expecting that. I chose it because I thought it'd be interesting to revisit something from Brian De Palma's filmography.
Saying it that way.
But I wasn't thrilled about the prospect of watching it again. But I thought that we'd possibly have an interesting discussion about it. But was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it the other night, to be honest.
Good. I think me too, probably.
Yeah.
I think that was similar to my experience. I couldn't remember a great deal about it beyond that sort of opening 20 minutes, which honestly, straight out of the gate, I'm going to say is the best part of the film.
Without question. I mean, that opening...
I don't think that's a controversial viewpoint.
No, I think that's probably a fairly common viewpoint. I think it absolutely is the best part of the movie. I love it. I just... Everything about it is just so interesting to look at. Of course, it wasn't actually one shot. It was, I think, 3.
Yeah, I think there's about a 12-minute sequence.
Right.
That's one shot.
Oh, really?
I think so.
That's still impressive.
Oh, yeah.
And especially in this movie where it's kind of a single location movie as well, isn't it? Because it's all set in the arena in Atlantic City.
Kind of stuck in a place.
Stuck in a place, yeah. But to have that sequence with all of those extras, Cage just going absolutely full Cage
at his cagiest.
He's full cagiest Cage in this, and certainly at the start where he's I'm Ricky, I'm the king of the sewer and all that stuff.
I think from now on, I'm just going to start justifying and qualifying everything with, well, it's fight night. Sarah, you're drinking at 3 p.m. It's fight night.
Yeah.
That's going to become a thing now. But yeah, I think you're right. It's fascinating because it's so frenetic and it's almost, not to sound wanky, it's almost like a dance sequence. Like the choreography must have had to be so tight for them to pull that off, even with the hidden edits. I don't know how many edits there are. I guess you say sort of maybe 2, 3 if it's stitched together.
I did read that it was stitched together from 3 shots.
From 3,
From
okay.
3 sequences. I wasn't thinking about that when I was watching it. I was just kind of enjoying it. And I often would like to watch films once, twice, maybe 3 times when we're covering for the podcast, but unfortunately didn't have time. I would love to have sat and watched that opening sequence again and tried to figure out where those cuts were.
Yeah.
But it wasn't obvious to me while I was watching it. Sometimes you'll get like where the camera goes past a person and it gets slightly darker and you're like, oh, okay, well, there's probably one there. And I'm sure that if we watched it again, we could probably pick them out, maybe.
Yeah.
But on viewing it the other night, I was just absolutely just gripped by the opening. And it's kind of, it's both good and bad because I was enjoying it so much and it's definitely the strongest part of the movie. And after that, it kind of sort of, it's just never as good, and that's a bit disappointing. I
think it becomes a bit more, what's the word? But just a bit more standard.
Yeah, it does, but it still has those magic De Palma sequences, those shots, so like the frame in it, and where he puts the camera, like it's still, there's still some absolute magic in there after that opening piece. But I think a lot of the back part of the film actually works so well because of that. The opening sequence,
because you're being introduced to all of these characters in real time. Like everybody who's somebody in the film, you're kind of introduced to in that sequence, with the exception of Carla. I never know how to pronounce her surname.
Carla Gugino. No, she is in the opening sequence.
Is she?
Yeah,
I couldn't remember.
Yeah, because she well, actually, is it before there's a cut? I can't remember where there's an obvious
It's sort
cut.
of just at the tail end, isn't it?
It's certainly at the end of it if it is part of the...
Because the shooting is kind of... That's the cut-off point, isn't it, for the...
I think so,
the opening.
I think so. But obviously she's been introduced by that point. So she must have been in the very final part. But it's just... I just love how it's... you're opening on Cage. You know what you're getting with his performance immediately. And he's definitely an actor that I've become more fond of. The more of his movies that I see and the older I get. I always enjoyed his action movies, but maybe back in the day thought, oh, he's a bit of an overactor.
Yeah, well, that was kind of his reputation for a while, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I think that's perfectly reasonable to think that.
It's absolutely fair. Yeah, it is. But I don't dislike it. And I can understand people hating it. I can understand people going, oh, this is too much. It really takes me out of the movie.
Specifically his performance in this one, you think?
In this one and other movies, yes.
Okay.
But I don't find that. Maybe it's because when I sit down to watch a Nicolas Cage movie, I'm like, well, I'm primed. I know I'm doing this because I want to see full Cage. Depends on the project, something a bit more low-key, like Dream Scenario, which we spoke about some time ago, where he's not doing the full thing. But yeah, I'm sort of, when I'm sitting down to watch it, I'm like, yeah, I want to see him do this. I want to see him go nuts. That's part of the fun.
So you think his performance being so large has put people off?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm sort of on the opposite end of that, where I think, I mean, you could say this about most Nicolas Cage films, to be honest. And I think I said this in the last show when we covered Face Off. I can't ever imagine his performances being done by anybody else.
No.
I can never picture anybody else in his roles because he's such a specific performer. He brings this absolute niche Nicolas Cage-ness to everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like this film particularly sort of doesn't work without him. And I think...
Really? Okay.
Well, yeah, because I can understand why some people would find the performance too big. But I think the character of Rick Santoro is such a piece of shit from the outset. But because it's Nicolas Cage, because he's charismatic, because he's sort of laying on the charm, he's larger than life, he's fun. You can see why people warm to him a little bit, even though he's kind of a scumbag.
I like that observation, because you're right. The character he's a crooked cop.
Yeah.
He's obviously taking bribes and he's stealing from drug dealers, and it's his town, and you just get this whole kind of backstory, hint of a backstory on the way that he runs his city, as he says, his sewer.
He's got awful taste in shirts and jackets, for that matter.
I quite liked his
No, awful.
I've got one on order. You're gonna be so disappointed.
I've just realised you're not wearing your Nicolas and the Cages t-shirt.
Oh, shit. I forgot.
That didn't last long.
Right, pause the podcast. No, that's a good observation, that, because if there's somebody else playing this role, they could go too
villainous,
too mean, too scummy.
Yeah.
You do need someone who is obviously not a great guy, but you're sort of warmed to him because he's like just a fun person, I guess.
Yeah, he's our anti-hero, so he has to be engaging.
Yep.
I think engaging, yes. Very clever.
You're welcome.
But I think he has to be entertaining. He has to be compelling to watch for us to sit with him. Because that was something that crossed my mind when I was watching it. I was just like, this character's awful, but I'm all right with it. Like, I'm okay, like, spending time with this guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's 100% down to Cage's performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just going back to that opening sequence, so we do get introduced to everything that's going on in the stadium, the pre-fight things, whatever that's called.
Yeah, you get a loose idea of the geography of the location. Yeah,
the actual arena itself, which you sort of come back to now and again. And it is one of its strengths, actually, is the like you say, the geography of it. You do know where you are most of the time, and you revisit certain locations, whether that's via sort of flashbacks when things are being revealed in the final parts of the movie,
or like just different angles that we didn't get the first time.
Yeah, and a lot of that is down to the first, as we say, 15 minutes where you're following Cage, the camera's sort of whipping round. You're not really seeing the fight, which is very interesting. It's a very interesting way of doing that. Because obviously when the camera's on Cage, I'm like, I love watching this. What's going on with the fight though? Oh, actually, I don't care.
Yeah.
Let's watch Cage. It's very interesting. And then obviously towards the latter part of that sequence, we get introduced to Lieutenant Dan. And now he's got legs.
Kevin Dunn. Yeah, Commander Kevin Dunn.
Kevin Dunn. There's someone in the cast
called Kevin Dunn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a story actually that there was a hotel room, really swanky hotel room booked for Kevin Dunn. And the actor Kevin Dunn sort of went up and got settled into it and then got yeeted out when it was revealed it was actually for the character of Kevin Dunn.
Right.
It was for second build Gary Sinise.
So Gary Sinise kicked him out, did he?
I don't know if he personally did it, but yeah. No. There was some confusion over those names.
Well, what happened is he went to the UPM and went, get that fucker out my road. Gary Sinise. When's the last time you watched a new Gary Sinise movie?
I don't know. Do you know what? I was thinking about that as we were watching it. And the only thing I could think of him having been in, I'm going to say recently, and I'm going to really embarrass myself.
Of Mice and Men.
No, but I do fucking love that.
It's great.
I watched that a bunch when I was in high school, and we actually read the Steinbeck book.
It's the same. I think it was obligation at school in our generation. I think you had to.
Oh, we didn't have to. I went and rented it on VHS from the library like a big fucking nerd.
Well, mine was mandated, so
right.
You know. But
good movie. Good movie.
It is good. It was one of those days where like, we got to watch this. Oh, that was right actually. This.
But yeah, he was in one of the CSIs. I want to say like CSI New York.
There's a New York, is there?
Oh, there's a CSI everywhere. It's like a CSI Gravesend. I don't know.
I don't think there is.
CSI Clacton.
CSI Jaywick. That's on every day of the year.
CSI Wigan.
CSI Hull.
I mean, they could. There's a lot of room there. But yeah, when I say recent, I'm sure that's like probably going back close to 20 years now. So I don't know. Is he still acting?
I guess.
Did he retire?
Maybe he's doing theatre. Maybe he's sort of retired or semi-retired or does bits and pieces. But he's definitely, I feel like in the 90s, he was in everything. Every time he popped up in a movie, I remember me and my mum would go, Lieutenant Dan! So that was fun. But the last thing I remember watching of his is, and I'm sure he was in a bunch of stuff after that, it's probably Mission to Mars, which is early 2000s, right?
Which is also De Palma.
Is it?
Yes.
I did not know that.
It is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd forgotten until I was doing my research for today.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I've actually been wanting to rewatch that.
Okay,
So,
well, there we go.
Another reason, yeah.
It's funny, like I actually sat there and did a bunch of research. I watched there's a video on YouTube by somebody called Roman Debien. It's a French name. I've probably butchered it. I apologize. If I remember, I'll write it out in the notes for this episode so you can have a look.
Okay.
But he's got a YouTube channel where he sort of does fantastic edits of specific directors' work. And he did one for Brian De Palma. And oh man, it's just made me want to really dive into his work more. What a visionary.
When we watched Carrie for the show, around about the same time I went back and rewatched Untouchables, which I spoke about in that show. But that was, again, that was a bit of a revelation to me. Like I'd seen that film back in the 90s at some point and been like, I quite like that. That's quite good. But this time watching it was just absolutely floored by some of the camera movements, where the camera was positioned, the shot composition, and just the fluidity of it all. And it's just a magnificent movie.
Yeah.
Mostly because of De Palma's fingerprints being all over it.
Yeah, he has such a specific style.
Yeah.
I love it. But yeah, do you happen to know if he'd done like the one take thing before, or was that new to him?
I've got no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
I do wonder why. I'm stoked that he chose to open the film this way, but I do wonder what informed that decision. Because the rest of it sort of plays out like a more standard thriller.
Yeah.
Like it's a little bit pulpy, almost a little bit Hitchcock in places, a little bit noir-y. But yeah, that beginning does sort of stand out. I don't know, perhaps it was just an experiment for him, but it paid off, whatever the case.
I don't know. If I'm speculating, I want to say Brian De Palma, he made Mission Impossible, which came out in 1996, which absolutely slayed at the box office. So like his biggest ever success, commercially speaking. So I imagine he probably, I don't know what the budget was for this. It can't have been a terribly huge amount, but I imagine he was given a bit more room maybe to be a bit more flexible or experimental. I know that he came up with this story idea with, is it David
Koepp?
David Koepp. I'm never sure if it's David Koepp or...
I think it's Koepp.
Yeah, we'll go with that. But yeah, who also worked on... who also wrote Mission Impossible, and they sat down together to come up with a story for this. So I wonder if they were just like, right, what do we want to do? We can do whatever we want. Let's get a one. I've always wanted to do a one, and let's get this in there. Yeah. So I don't know.
Because he does seem like a very experimental director. He takes a lot of chances. Yeah. And you can sort of see like the things that work stick around. Obviously certain trademarks, most of which are present here, like the whole kind of top-down angle, which I loved in this and I want to talk about later on.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. But the split screen that you've already mentioned, the POV shots, which are really interesting and are very sort of giallo. That's what it puts me in mind of whenever I see it. But I think Brian De Palma sort of, I don't know if he was influenced by or influenced the giallo movement. Well, when did De Palma start making films? Was it the 70s or was it earlier than that?
I think I want to say late 60s.
Late 60s?
Late 60s, possibly. Okay. Could be wrong. But he certainly was around at that time.
Yeah.
And obviously he's making things like Carrie. And what's that Michael Caine one?
Oh shit.
Whatever that's called.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Is that kind of giallo-esque? I've seen frames from it, and it feels like it could be. I don't know, but I feel like he's definitely was influenced by that. I'm sure that he was going to sort of the cinema and seeing those films, and they sort of infiltrated his psyche to some degree.
But there is something a little bit European about his style, I think.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, there is.
Like, but specifics are hard to put my finger on.
No, he does feel like a very European filmmaker, doesn't he? That's a very astute observation. I like it.
Oh, thank you. Don't often get compliments like that on the show. So we've talked a lot about Cage. Obviously, that's what we're here to do. But what about the rest of the cast?
Who else was in? Luis Guzman.
Luis Guzman.
I saw he was in the cast before we watched the movie. I was disappointed that he wasn't in it more, to be honest with you.
He's a good character actor.
He is. Obviously, we mentioned Carlo Gugino, who's in it, and that's all I know. Who else was in it?
John Hurd.
Okay.
Was he the owner of the casino? I know his character was supposed to be based on Donald Trump.
Okay.
Stan Shaw.
Oh, he was the boxer guy.
Yes. Yeah. Who's played, I feel like he sort of seems to get a little bit typecast because he played boxers in Harlem Nights and Rocky 2 as well.
Oh, right.
So I don't know what it is about him that screams, that guy's a boxer.
Maybe he is actually a boxer.
Yeah, maybe he has a boxing background. That would explain things. But yeah, they're the notable ones, aren't they? It's not exactly like a star-studded cast.
Well, they're not really people that I'm overly familiar with of their work. They're kind of
there's a lot of those. Yeah, I was going to say like, oh, it's that guy.
Yeah, even the name John Hurd, I'm like, John Hurt? Was he in it?
John Hurd. Wasn't John Hurd I only say this because we watched them recently. Isn't he not the dad in Home Alone?
Yeah, he might be.
I mean,
the people screaming at their podcast player at the moment. Going, of course he's the dad. Yeah, I think
you'd be forgiven for forgetting since he's not in the movies that much on account of continuously leaving his child alone. Yeah. Worst parent in the world.
And not seeming to be that bothered about it.
Yeah, doesn't give a shit.
Like, we'll get back when we get back.
Yeah, one fewer. Boo-hoo.
Oh, did it again? Oh, right. Yeah, we watched that 2 weeks ago and I've almost immediately forgotten his face.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's him, isn't it?
I think so.
I'm 98% certain that it is now. You've talked me into it.
I'm sorry if I'm wrong.
No, it's him. It's him. Have we covered anything with Carla Gugino in it?
I don't think we
in
have
a movie
yet.
I'm probably thinking of something we watched relatively recently, The One.
Oh, God.
She's objectified in that movie as well.
She's always objectified.
She is, yeah.
And there's no sort of... There's no way to follow that up without objectifying her. Like,
well,
of course she's objectified. Look at her. Like, there's no way around it. But yet she's also a good actor.
She's really good. Obviously, more lately sort of affiliated with
Mike Flanagan,
Mickey Flanagan.
Mickey.
Not.
Oh,
no,
that's
Mickey. That's a comedian, isn't it?
Yes, completely different
it's the
guy.
Comedian that talks about fingering.
Does he?
Yeah, you never seen a Flanagan's show?
No, I have not.
I have.
Clearly. But yeah, she's in, I think, most, if not all, of the Mike Flanagan shows.
She's not in Midnight Mass, is she?
Oh, no, you're right.
But she's definitely in
all of the others. Yeah, Full of the House of Usher, Bly Manor, Hill House.
Yes, Hill House that's the one that was on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, she's great in that.
She really is, yeah.
And a bunch of like more recent, somewhat underrated stuff. Like, I quite enjoyed Gunpowder Milkshake. I'm in the minority.
Was she in that?
She was.
Okay.
I'm in the minority there. I realise that. But female-led action movie, I'm there, you know?
I barely remember it. It was Karen Gillan in that.
Yes.
I remember her wearing a cool jacket.
She did have a cool jacket, yes. Yeah. It was a little bit Drive inspired, if I remember correctly. But yeah, she's somebody that pops up a lot. Consistently been working for decades, but doesn't seem to have gotten the recognition that she maybe deserves.
I would agree with that up until recently, where obviously Flanagan's been like, look, you've got to be in all my stuff because you're fucking great.
Yeah.
And but certainly around this time in the 90s, she's kind of underused in this. Yeah. And I don't love her characterization either. It could have been way more interesting.
Agreed.
Her role in the film. And
Agreed.
I think that's one of my main criticisms of this.
I think she is perhaps the most relatable femme fatale in a thriller, though, because I also can't see shit when my glasses are off. Yeah. So I like her for that.
I thought she was kind of underused because she sort of pops up in the first act. And then she's just stumbling around.
She's just bimbling around
the casino for an hour. Mm-hmm. And you're not quite sure what's going on with her character. And I get it, it's part of the mystery of the film because Well, for a mystery movie, I think that they gave away something pretty major very early, which I guess they meant to. I don't really know.
Which thing are you referring to?
Well, when you see the shooting happen,
Mm-hmm.
you see a gun pointing out,
Yeah.
like behind a pillar,
Mm-hmm.
and you know Gary Sinise is wearing that super military coat thing,
Yeah.
with like the gold bands.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the person pointing the gun out has got little gold bands around them. You're
Right.
like, oh, it's Gary Sinise. It's Lieutenant Dan. You know that. I mean, I knew that anyway because I remembered from the movie. I knew he was the bad guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, they kind of spoiled that. So to make Carla's character, I can't remember her character name. Let's just call her Carla.
Okay.
to make her character a bit more mysterious, I thought they maybe should have done that the other way round, because like we say, she was just sort of just walking around for an hour and not really doing much, and then she's sort of wasted a bit. She sort of becomes this what's that phrase when a woman is in peril? The
damsel in distress.
She sort of becomes a bit of a damsel in distress.
She's kind of she's a damsel in distress, and she's also kind of a MacGuffin as well.
Mm.
And you're right, her character is drastically underused, and I think I would like to say it's more to do with what's on the page than what she brought to the performance.
Oh, it absolutely is, yeah.
Because I think she's capable of much more, but the character was a little bit bland.
Yeah. Oh, I thought she was fine in the role, but definitely an underwritten character, an underused character.
Yeah.
For sure. But we do get to see her in her bra a couple of times.
Well,
she's bending over, isn't she?
Yeah. So, Speaking of objectifying her, yeah.
Look, it's a Brian De Palma movie. Right?
He does seem to like. How can I phrase this diplomatically?
Don't worry about it.
He doesn't necessarily make sexy movies, but he does film people in a sexy way. He sort of films bodies in a kind of a sexy way.
Oh, he's a fucking perv.
Yeah.
He's an absolute perv.
It's me trying to be diplomatic.
No, fuck all that. Don't be diplomatic.
Oh, he's a proper lech.
He is. I'm sure he'd be the first to admit it as well. It's like him and Tarantino in a screening together.
Oh, God. Gross.
Yeah.
Oof. Oh, no. Be a lot more feet involved.
Yeah. I don't want to.
No. The less said about that, the better. Yeah, so you mentioned already, this is only 2 years after Mission Impossible. I always forget that's him, you know. Was it
Mission Impossible?
Yeah. Was it Mission Impossible 2 that John Woo did?
Mission Impossible 2?
John Woo. There's my shorthand. I get it. Okay.
Mission Impossible 3, J.J. Abrams.
I'm never going to remember that.
Mission Impossible 4 was The Incredibles guy, Brad Bird.
Wow.
Brad Bird. Mission Impossible 5.
Oh, here we go.
Christopher McQuarrie.
Who we've also covered a film of.
We did.
Was it Way of the Gun?
The Way of the Gun.
Yeah.
With Mr. Chris Regan from Just the Thing.
Yeah. That was a fun chat.
It was a really interesting chat.
More so than the film, if I'm being honest.
No, I like the film.
I know you do.
I like the film. It's more interesting to talk about than it is to watch, I will admit. There's some really interesting stuff going on there, and it's also quite experimental. But anyway, go and fucking listen to that show.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about it now.
So going back to Snake Eyes,
The G.I. Joe one or 1998?
I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. I'm going to echo a minor criticism that you had already and say that I think, obviously, this is kind of a mystery thriller. The threads are unraveled gradually, but I think some of the major reveals happened too soon.
Well, I agree.
Obviously, I'm going to hold my hands up and say I didn't necessarily notice the what do you call it on his sleeve? I didn't clock that, but I still think when it's revealed, I think it's not until Rick's in the surveillance room and you just see a pair of shoes behind him on the stairs, which is actually a really creepy, a really effective shot, I find. And then obviously Gary Sinise comes down and reveals his dastardly plan. But I think that happened too soon.
Yeah.
I would have preferred... Oh, no, we already knew because we saw him kill his co-conspirators, didn't we?
Right. Yeah.
So we already knew at that point, but Rick didn't.
Yeah. Oh, the guy at the boxing match who stood up and said, "Bring the pain," which was the signal to the boxer to throw the fight, and also the woman that's not Charlize Theron.
Doesn't look anything like Charlize Theron.
Did it not?
No.
Oh, I thought it did.
She was female and had a face.
Yeah. So she looked like Charlize Theron. But that was the only scene that we saw her in, wasn't it? I was like, who's she? And why do we care that she's being shot in the face?
Well, she was the woman in the red dress.
Was she?
Yes.
But she was ginger.
It was a wig.
Oh, God,
Damn.
I'm very easily fooled, aren't I? Really? Oh,
Yeah.
well, that explains everything.
Is this why men call makeup catfishing? Did you recognise me when I came home from the hairdressers yesterday with different coloured hair?
No, I thought you were a stranger.
Who's this woman on my sofa?
That's why I phoned the old Bill. That's why you got incarcerated overnight.
That's why I've got a record now. Great.
Yeah, lock her up, I said. Throw away the key, I said. But you're back.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah, just in time to podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I had no idea. I was like, who the fuck's that? And why do I care? But yeah, it turns out. And I was actually going to say, well, we never see the woman in the red dress again. Like, what happened to her? So
Yeah.
2 of my questions answered.
So to those of us amongst the viewership that don't have face blindness, yes, that's. I think you're making me doubt myself now.
I mean, it makes total sense because otherwise, who is she and where did the woman in the red dress go?
Well, that was my thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the only thing that didn't make sense to me. I didn't love the whole misdirect of when Gary Sinise follows her. Obviously, that was his visible alibi as to why he wasn't there during the shooting.
Yeah.
But then we sort of see that conversation between them when nobody else is around. I mean, I guess that was just so that he was caught on CCTV or whatever.
Yeah, I guess so.
But that I didn't love that in terms of the misdirect. I don't think we needed to be privy to their conversation because they still played it out like they didn't know each other.
It's in films. It's a real problem of mine when something is done seemingly just
for the audience.
Yeah, when it doesn't necessarily make narrative sense. I have a real problem with that. Like it has to make sense within the story as well. And maybe there is an explanation, but yeah, I hate that.
Well, something else that I'm going to mention a little bit later on is it seems like there were a lot of studio notes for this movie. So I wonder whether or not it got chopped up a bit too much in the edit. I couldn't find any kind of concrete information regarding that, except the ending, which we will talk about when we get to it. But yeah, I do feel like if we'd just seen that conversation from further away and hadn't heard what they were saying, that would have made far more sense for me narratively. Yeah, so it's at that, obviously, oh God, I've waffled. I went off on quite a tangent. But yeah, when Rick finds out that Gary Sinise is obviously the bad guy, I do really enjoy that conversation between them though.
Where Lieutenant Dan is offering him the bribe.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, right, he went, right, how about 250 grand? Cage said nothing. And he went, all right, 500.
He kept escalating very fast.
Like, I reckon like he could have got to $500,000 and Cage would have been considering it. Obviously, he doesn't take the money in the end. That's part of his arc. But he really like went up way too, like terrible negotiator.
Yeah. Kevin Dunn, terrible at bartering.
Yeah.
But
I really good at shooting himself in the heart though, which is probably quite difficult. I
would imagine so. Yeah. I don't know. Ask Nicolas Cage in The Rock.
I'll stab myself in the heart with this thing.
Yeah. But I do love the nuance of both characters and of that conversation in particular. Just you can kind of see. I think that's probably Nicolas Cage's strongest scene in the movie, acting wise, because you can really see the betrayal and the conflict on his face. I think at that point. Yeah,
and it's because Lieutenant Dan knows that Cage is a bit of a scumbag. He likes to take a payday behind closed doors. That's the terrible phrase. He accepts bribes and things like that. So he knows, like, he can invite him. He can be an alibi. He can use him as a scapegoat. Like, there's multiple ways that he can play him, and he knows that. And Cage is pissed off because it's his mate.
Well, yeah,
And also,
they talk about being childhood friends, don't they?
yeah, and it feels like the backstory to those two is where is Lieutenant Dan always kind of persuading him to not do the bad thing.
Yeah.
Maybe. Like he maybe got him out of trouble quite a lot, and he was maybe the good guy. So it was definitely a real turnaround for that character, and you did see a lot of that in Cage's performance, and definitely the conflict. Like he was really seriously considering taking that money.
Yeah, I think so.
But obviously we had the very subtle metaphor of the money with the blood on it. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, no, I didn't. It was so subtle, yeah.
It was. And it's not like they showed it to you 7 times.
And even comments on it the first time, like, oh, it's sticky.
Yeah. There was a still for 10 minutes. It just looked at it. And the big words appeared on the screen. It said metaphor.
This little asterisk in the corner. This will be relevant later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chekhov's literal dirty money.
Yes, yeah, blood money. I reckon that's what it was saying, you know.
Oh yeah, could be.
That's my hot take on this movie.
That's smart.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. But yeah, I do really enjoy Cage's performance in this. I think he's actually quite good.
Yeah.
I enjoy all the large stuff. And then as it gets towards the end of the movie, he does tone it down a bit as he finds out he's been betrayed by his friend, and there's this conspiracy going on, and there's this whole story about the faking the missile performance and stuff like that. He's sort of confused and just discombobulated and doesn't really know what's going on, but also like he's pieced it all together as well, but he just can't understand why his friend has betrayed him to such a degree, I guess, because from his point of view it's such a spin for that character. And I wonder just how long he's kind of been a bit of a shitbag and just not really been honest with Cage. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you get the impression that Gary Sinise is evil, or that he thinks he's doing the right thing for the right reasons?
That's a good question. I actually think that he thinks he's doing the right thing. Ring finger. Right thing. The right thing. I believe he's doing what he thinks is for the best.
For the greater good.
The greater good. Yeah. Because he has that speech, doesn't he, about the submarine?
Yeah.
Was it a submarine where he had to...
I believe so.
His men were drowning.
Yeah.
And he was sort of saying, these weapons, they're not perfect, but that they will help us not lose so many soldiers. So we're going to falsify this information to get this project off the ground. And I believe, possibly because of Gary Sinise's performance, that he actually believes that he's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I definitely believe that Gary Sinise, while he was acting that, thought that too. Because you hear that from actors, don't you? Like, they have to kind of like the characters, or at least understand where they're coming from, empathise with them to some degree to sort of get under their skin. And I got that. I felt like he thought that he was doing bad shit for the right reasons. What do you think?
I'm with you. And I think that's one reason I really enjoy that conversation, just that one scene so much, because you can see the nuance on both sides. I love it when it's just not black and white, good versus evil.
Same.
I really enjoy that.
Yeah, it could have quite easily just been, they could have just done the throw
Nicolas
in the
Cage,
fight
super
stuff.
cop.
Yeah.
Like, saves everybody. A friend turns out to be dastardly monster.
Yeah, because money.
Yeah, that would have been so boring, but easy to do. And we've seen it 1,000 times.
I remembered a lot of this movie, but I did forget the kind of the more finer details and mechanics of Gary Sinise's plan.
Me too, yeah. I don't think I would have appreciated that back when I saw it for the first time either.
No.
I was an idiot teenager. I wouldn't have grasped all of it, I don't think.
I was an idiot.
Yeah. Was?
Let's move on. I think let's move on.
Okay. But yeah, just to revisit the point I was making, I think maybe some of those reveals I think they did happen a little bit too soon, which is curious because this film's pretty short. I think it's only just over an hour and a half.
Yeah, which is lovely like these days. Like,
oh, yeah. It breezes by.
It really does, yeah.
But I do think some of those threads were unraveled a little bit too soon, because I found that the first half had such tightness and such like escalating tension. And then when we get that reveal, when Rick finds out, that really sort of deflated a lot of the tension for me. and the back end didn't really resonate in the same way that the front end did.
I suppose that the tension in the latter part of the movie is supposed to be, you're hoping that Carla Gugino, her character name,
Whose name we've forgotten, yeah.
whose name we've forgotten. Yeah, I suppose the tension really should be lying in whether or not she's going to make it, and what way Nicolas Cage is going to go. Because you're never sure, really, until the very end of the movie.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, I sort of remembered how it went down, but not all of the details. But I do remember that he kind of made the right decision at the end.
Yeah.
So the tension was not really there for me for that part.
So we're sort of getting towards the end of the film now, and I want to take some real time to talk about something that I touched on, which is that I suspect there are a lot of studio notes for this movie.
Yeah.
And changes that happened, a lot of which have to do with the ending. Well, first of all, something that I read was that the studio wanted it to be a PG-13.
No, piss off with it.
Agreed. I couldn't find any information about what happened, who fought it, but they did push it out with its original R rating. And it's better for it, I think.
Some movies you can probably get away with it, but like this, absolutely not, because Cage is a scumbag. You feel like he's on cocaine the entire time. That's kind of a subtext of the movie.
Yeah.
There's literal blood money, as we've discussed. There's drug dealers in it. There's conspiracy. There's murders. Like, if you remove all of the stuff that makes this an R15, R-rated, whatever, then it's not a movie. It's what's left. I hate that.
Yeah, it'd be a 30-minute short.
So do you think that there was some compromise there, maybe? Do you think that maybe there was a harder version than the version we actually got, and they sort of compromised for it to be an R?
Potentially. With it being De Palma, I wouldn't put it past him. But I'm really glad it went out with his sort of harder vision.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a soft filmmaker, is he? Like, you see Scarface and you watch someone getting chainsawed to death. Like, there is some brutal stuff in that, and there's blood flying all over the place in Carrie and stuff like that. So,
but even Carrie, that's sort of got softer undertones and like is about just female coming of age and the telekinesis that comes with that. Apparently, I've yet to get mine. Keep trying, but yeah, like that kind of is almost a teen horror.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And that's still a hard 18 certificate in the UK. And it's all the better for it. So he doesn't seem like a director that has to compromise very much. But as you said, sort of coming off the back of a huge success like Mission Impossible, he probably did get a bunch of studio money to make a film that he wanted to do, but was maybe reined in a little bit. Yeah,
maybe when they saw it, they were like, oh, we didn't realise it was going to be a kind of a mystery thriller.
Yeah.
Mystery thrillers are not playing in 1998. We need a Tom Cruise jumping off a train or whatever.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be more of a 4-quadrant bums on seats kind of a deal.
Yeah, and especially after the Nicolas Cage holy triple. Those three
the
movies.
Beige Volvo
the
trilogy.
Beige Volvo trilogy, yeah. Especially after that, they might have been thinking like, oh, he's a
big name. He's going to get tickets sold, yeah,
and then they saw it and they're like, oh, this is not an action movie. This is like a complex, gritty thriller.
Yeah, this is a neo-noir. We want it to be more of an action movie. Yeah.
So I wonder if there's somewhere there's a longer cut of this, if there's any way you can watch deleted scenes. Like it pisses me off that we live in an age, coming from somebody that quite likes the Zack Snyder Justice League, right? I quite like it. Fucking hate that 2017 Joss Whedon bullshit. Horrible movie. So when that Zack Snyder one came out, yes, it's 3 days long.
It's a better film though.
I really fucking liked it. It's probably my favourite. I do like Man of Steel. Anyway, let's not get into that. But
Now's not the time.
No. My gripe is that I feel like every movie Zack Snyder makes now, he does a 2-hour version and a 4-hour version.
Well, they're talking about doing that for Rebel Moon, aren't they?
They've done it.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, there you go then.
I think there's now 4 Rebel Moon movies, and we ain't seen none of them.
That's 4 more than anybody asked for.
Never watching them. But it pisses me off that we're now getting that, where actually what I would like to see is the original version of this.
Yeah.
Like what was originally planned. I bet there's way more interesting stuff. Maybe it's worse. Like there's no way to tell, but it would be interesting
for sure.
Nonetheless.
So on that thread, I did manage to find the alternate ending or the deleted ending on YouTube. Apparently, it did get a decent Blu-ray release in America a couple of years ago that did sort of feature some deleted scenes, including this ending. Now, the bulk of the ending remains the same, but one huge thing was removed in the version that we saw, and I think the film drastically suffers for it. So basically, the ending kind of doesn't make sense in its theatrical form.
I did have questions about the ending, so I'd be interested to hear what was the original intention for it.
So obviously, the OG ending, we get all of the same build-up. Like Nicolas Cage turns down the bribe, gets a pretty gnarly beating from Gary Sinise's guys,
the boxer,
his heavies, and
his mate, his old schoolmate,
Lincoln something.
Abraham.
Yes, Abraham Lincoln, the boxer. And then he's sort of shuffling along to try and save Carla Gugino. Yeah. And Gary Sinise is following him and he sees the shadow.
Alec Baldwin?
Not that shadow.
Because that would be terrifying.
It would, yeah. Alec Baldwin with a gun behind you. It's too soon.
Don't.
We shouldn't joke about that.
No.
But yeah, all of that remains the same, except the thing that keeps being referred to throughout the film actually comes to fruition.
Right.
And a huge CGI, I believe it was ILM, did a huge tidal wave that sort of took out the back end of the casino and rolls that little Millennium Globe thing into the building that's just been like rolling around outside the casino for a while.
That's why there was a random shot of that globe then. That's for no reason. Right.
Yeah. That, and it was just before 2000 where everything was called the Millennium something or other.
Right.
My college literally opened a new building and called it the Millennium Building.
Yeah. Robbie Williams had that song.
Yeah.
Will Smith had that song. No, that was Millennium, wasn't it? That was very different.
It's funny you should mention him. Will Smith, the Gary Sinise's role was written for Will Smith.
Oh, really?
Apparently, it was written with him in mind.
I enjoy Will Smith, especially in this time period. But fuck off with that.
I know. But the studio apparently just went, you want 12 million? Get out.
Yeah.
Gary Sinise it is.
Yeah, it was the correct decision.
Agreed. But yeah, so a huge tidal wave kind of washes Gary Sinise away.
That sounds horrible to me. What? Did you watch that actual ending then?
Yeah.
And how did it look?
It looked fine.
Did it look good from a VFX perspective?
So it's hard to say because the version that I watched, it sort of was unfinished.
Yeah, sure.
Like the footage was a little bit ropey.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, but I think it looked pretty good.
So him shooting himself in the heart then, that's a reshoot, I guess?
I imagine so, yeah. But I'm not sure why they did that because to me, like the tidal wave and him kind of being washed away is sort of poetic justice following his speech about watching the men drown.
Yeah, I guess so.
That kind of makes more sense. It makes a lot more sense because, I mean, the first thing we see in this movie is the TV news reporter, the news anchor out front talking about the weather. And like we revisit her at the end because they want to do a segment on how bad the storm is getting. And then obviously the water rushes in and covers Nicolas Cage and Carla Gugino as well, which is why at the very end he says, I can't remember the line. It's like, I keep seeing myself back there in the tunnel underwater. So in the version we watched, it's like, huh? Excuse me? What the fuck are you talking about, Nicolas Cage?
Right at the end of the movie, he's talking to Gugino about.
Yep.
I missed that, I must admit. Maybe I thought it was a metaphor again.
Maybe, but no, it was literal. We just didn't get to see that in the theatrical cut.
Okay. It's funny because when I was watching it, I noticed that shot of the globe, as I mentioned, and I thought, well, that's random. I wonder if that's going to be relevant, and it's not at all. So I'm curious as to why they didn't just whip that out altogether. I remember at the end of the movie seeing the storm. I'd forgotten completely that there was a storm at the start of the movie, so I was like, oh, it's a bit windy today, is it? Okay, fine. Why is that relevant? And also like now you mention it, and we've sort of come to the conclusion that some of those final scenes between Sinise and Cage were probably reshoots. It does kind of feel like a small set when you think about it. Like it's quite close up. It's quite generic. It's just like a sort of a steel door with some metal paneling and stuff. It's quite a generic set for a kind of a final showdown, if you like.
Yeah.
So yeah, that does make complete sense. Why would they have stopped that, do you think?
I honestly don't know. I couldn't find any information about why that was removed. I suspect it was, again, studio interference, because there was a 2015 documentary about Brian De Palma.
Yes, which I watched.
You watched.
The Noah Baumbach one.
He talks about it in that.
Oh, right. So I should have known all of this.
Yeah. So I did find a little clip, and somebody, he basically talks about how, in his mind, what he wanted to happen was that the corruption that we see in the film ran so deep, was so severe, that the only thing that could wash it all away was like an act of God.
Right.
So that's why he envisioned that happening. That was definitely his brainchild.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't convinced when you talk about the tidal wave, but the more you talk about it, yeah, it does kind of make more sense.
It just feels more like a climax as well. Like that's one of my criticisms of the version that we watched, is it felt anticlimactic.
It just sort of peters out a little bit,
yeah.
doesn't it? Yeah. It's like Lieutenant Dan is a bit confused. Like, oh, there's the ambulance here now. Fuck it, I'm going to shoot myself in the heart.
Yeah.
Not the head.
No.
Like, because you see the gun, you're like, and he looks at the gun, you're like, he's going to do himself in the brain. Nah. Why would you do that?
Well, that's because you can shoot yourself in the head and survive.
You can shoot yourself in the heart and survive. You got to be. I feel like you got to be.
I feel like
precise.
that has to be rarer, though, right?
I think it's harder to find your heart than it is to find your head, because your head is on the outside of the body, you understand? And you can just go plop like that.
That's true, yeah.
Like, you can't see what I'm doing here, I'm just going plop.
Yeah. Yeah, you make a solid point there. And also the ending features my least favourite part of the movie, which is the really, really bizarre tacked on romance.
Oh, by the way, we're in love.
What the fuck?
Yeah, agreed.
Because, like, even the dialogue was really bad, because it was like Carla Gugino was sort of trying to vet him as a potential partner. But, like, you know those, like, speed dating things? I've never done one, but I've seen them on TV. It felt like a speed date. Oh, you know, how old are you? 35. You married? Not anymore. Do you have a girlfriend? Oh, she ran off. Oh, it could be worse. They could have run off together. Like, little joke, little misogynistic joke. But it's like she's doing speed dating, and she's like, he's single and he's 35. I will now kiss him.
Yeah.
It was so weird and out of nowhere, and it had to be a studio note. It had to be.
I think you're right.
Because not only was there zero chemistry between them throughout the movie, there was never any inkling that either one found the other attractive. But further to that, he was kind of awful to her.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he protected her, but he was also a bastard.
Well, he very nearly let her die.
Yeah.
Like, it was 50-50 where, like, what he was going to do. He was definitely considering taking that £1 million. He was thinking about it. Had they not rammed it home so hard that money had blood on it, I think he might have just let her die.
Yeah, but
like,
and when he was saving her, he was kind of awful to her for a lot of that. So, like, where's the appeal?
Yeah, there's no development in that relationship at all to justify that ending.
No,
and that's something that really pissed me off as well. Like, it got to the end, and they, like you say, they have that exchange, which is weird, and then she just gives him a little kiss. Oh, hi, yeah, you're really attractive, Nicolas Cage, and I fancy the shit out of you.
Even despite your terrible shirts.
Even though you nearly let me die, very nearly let me die. You locked me in that room.
Yeah.
We had no, like you say, no chemistry throughout the movie. You were a bit rude to me, actually, when we first met, because you said that you would only take a minute, and I wondered what you was talking about there, Nicolas Cage.
Ladies, the bar is in hell. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't love that ending. It was, I I had a problem with that because it sort of felt like it came out of nowhere.
Mhm.
And now you mention it, it does absolutely feel like a studio note. Like, well, it's got to end up with a girl.
Yeah, we need
What's-
to get women involved. What are they gonna? What reason have we given for women to watch this film? Stick in a romance angle,
Yeah.
get more bombs on seats. But it's got to be the money people.
Yeah, it
asking for that.
It does feel like it. But I also like wonder how all of his corruption was exposed. Like, what was the deal there? Like, because obviously it's mentioned that he's going to go away to jail for about 18 months.
That's something I do love about the ending. I really look. I'm a sucker for a good anti-hero anyway, but I really love the fact that he's hailed as a hero, but still has to face his crimes.
Yeah.
Still has to answer for them. I really do like that, because a lot of other films would have just been like, oh, but you did this heroic act, so we're just going to brush everything bad that you did under the carpet and never mention it again.
All is forgiven.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the fact that he had to serve time and essentially go to jail for his crimes. It's more that, again, it kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Like, for someone such as him, who's been running that town for, I don't know, a decade or whatever, taking bribes from everybody, stealing from criminals and stuff, is obviously a very intelligent man, knows how to cover his tracks. He actually says that in the movie. And then all of a sudden, all of this stuff is uncovered. And I get that there probably was some investigation of it into Gary Sinise and that character, but I wonder how it kind of got from him to Nicolas Cage. Would they really have investigated Nicolas Cage character to that sort of degree, knowing that he's sort of saved the day? I don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't mind that he went to jail. I quite like that as well. I just wish that it kind of fit a little better in the story, I guess, or maybe just an extra sort of 15 minutes, would have benefited this movie. And I don't say that very often. And this movie does sort of breeze by.
Yeah.
And there's so much to like about it with the camera and stuff. We didn't even talk about the overhead stuff in the hotel when
was going to.
When Josh Gad tries to get Carlo Gugino in the hotel room. I honestly thought I was like, is that Josh Gad? I was like, no, he'd been 4 years old. Did it not look like Josh Gad?
Yeah, a little bit. Now you've said it.
I know I've got the face thing. And I thought that the redhead was also Charlize Theron. But that's definitely Josh Gad. I'm sorry. Yeah, I loved that shot so much. When it went above the hotel rooms and it went over like four rooms.
So I was going to ask you actually if you had any favourite shots, because that's hands down one of mine.
Yeah.
I do love a lot of what De Palma does, just in general. I think he's got fantastic flair behind the camera. I love the Dutch angles. I think the first one we see is when Nicolas Cage is roughing up Luis Guzman in that beginning segment, and the camera just tilts, and I'm like, oh yeah, give me that sweet Dutch angle. Also, I'm a huge fan of split diopter shots, which is a massive one of his trademarks. Underused massively, but that top down shot is fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. You just think about the kind of the production that goes into it, the setting up of that, physically getting the camera above them, all of the actors working in unison, like you say earlier on with the kind of the one shot at the beginning of the movie feels a bit like a dance. It's very similar there as well. Everyone's on their marks and they're cued at a certain point. Cameras come in, fucking we better start spraying each other with silly string. And it's just really nice. You don't get that much of that sort of stuff anymore. And maybe that's part of the reason why, going back and looking at this stuff now, I do appreciate it a bit more, because very rare you'll get the odd long sequence in movies now, but you don't get, outside of a few kind of filmmakers who are still doing it, you don't get that stuff so much anymore. It definitely feel like it's a kind of a bit of a relic.
Yeah, now. And I think,
and I wish they would sort of be a bit more experimental than a lot of filmmakers are these days.
Yeah, and I think when it is used, it tends to be a gimmick or a selling point. Like, there's a couple of films we've watched recently, both of which I loved. One of which was Victoria, the film that's set in real time in Berlin.
Oh,
Obviously, it's real time,
of course,
because it's one take.
that was literally one sequence, wasn't it?
One
And
take,
they did
2.5 hours. It was phenomenally done.
Yes, yeah.
I can't wait to watch that again. I absolutely loved that. Another was a French zombie film called Mads, which again was really well choreographed. All one take, but did have some sort of VFX added after the fact. But yeah, so it's usually used as like a selling point.
Yeah.
Like that's specifically how they sell the film. It's not just a thing that a filmmaker decides to try out.
Yeah. It's sort of, it's not really anymore you're just going to watch a movie plus there's this cool shit in it.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to do this thing, and this is why we're going to advertise it to you. Like 1917 is a good example.
Yeah, yeah.
Like obviously not really a one-shot movie, but it was definitely
designed.
sold.
Designed to look like one.
And 100% marketed like, this is why you need to see this movie. And I love that film. I do. But it would be nice to get, how many mystery thrillers can you name that are shot like this?
I can't.
I can't think of another one.
That aren't also directed by Brian De Palma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I sort of miss it now. I sort of miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is probably one of the reasons I enjoyed this as much as I did.
Yeah, like I said at the start of the show, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. It was in there because I wanted to talk about De Palma again. I wanted to I sort of was trying to mix up the genres a little bit as well, so there was a little bit of that, but I was surprised by how much I kind of enjoyed it. It's, like we said, not perfect. We've mentioned some of the things we didn't like, which are pretty much exclusively in the second half of the movie, I would say.
Yeah.
Not even Josh Gad could say the second half of this movie, but I liked it more than I thought I would, and I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I was really, really surprised by how much I enjoyed rewatching this, actually.
Yeah.
And I kind of regret not coming back to it sooner. I think in the hands of a lesser director, it could have just been another by the numbers thriller. But I think because of the visual style and the chances that Brian De Palma took, it really elevated it into something kind of special. And
I love that Cage and De Palma got to make a movie together.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so glad that combination happened. Obviously, I would say my favourite movie of his is probably Scarface.
Yeah.
And the kind of the team up of him and Pacino is just incredible. Probably his most iconic role, Pacino, I would say.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it's funny, really, because when I think about Nicolas Cage, and I think who's most like Nicolas Cage, what other, and I always think Al Pacino and Nicolas Cage are kind of the two actors that are most similar. There's no one quite like Nicolas Cage, or Al Pacino for that matter, but I find them kind of similar because they're not always, but like they're larger than life, like, and they're a bit absurd in some of their performances. I think I prefer Cage on the whole. I think he's done better work on the whole. Not a fan of Godfather, I'm sorry.
I prefer the choices that Nicolas Cage has made, yeah.
Yeah, but I do find them kind of similar because they're not afraid to be larger than life and take some chances. I feel like Cage has maybe got more range, I don't know, but... Potentially.
Yeah. Larger than life. And you've not even seen House of Gucci.
I will never.
Oh, you will?
No.
You will?
I won't.
You will. I'm definitely going to do a true crime season one day.
And why is that going to be on it?
Because it's going to be so much fun to tear it apart.
I'm going to do a Jared Leto movie.
Oh, we're going to have to eventually, aren't we? He's in really good stuff, frustratingly.
I mean...
Suicide Squad aside.
For some reason, they're still putting him in movies.
Yeah, good ones.
Like Morbius, for example. I haven't seen Morbius. I'm told it's excellent, though.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Nah. But I'm really glad, anyway, that I decided to cover Snake Eyes. It's been a really interesting chat and a really interesting rewatch, rather. And maybe might be one that you said there's a fancy blue.
I believe so. We didn't get one, but there was one in the States, I think.
Yeah, but we have a region-free Blu-ray.
Yes, we do.
Just procure it and watch it.
But before we get too excited about potentially watching Snake Eyes again,
the Brian De Palma one, not the
G.I. Joe one.
Yeah.
What are you going to make me watch next week? What filth do I have to pour into my eyes next week, Dan?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. Oh. I don't know how to put this.
Just say it. Just rip the Band-Aid off.
Right, okay. Well, we're going to be covering The Wicker Man.
Of course we are.
I've never seen this remake of The Wicker Man.
Oof.
I've heard all about it. We've done some good movies, and we like to balance things out and do a variety of things. We've done enough good movies now. Let's do one that's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Or maybe it'll be fun. Is it a comedy? I don't know.
Anything's a comedy if you're high enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've seen the original Wicker Man in fairly recent memory, so it'll be really interesting to compare and contrast as well.
I wonder which one's going to be better.
I have an inkling.
Well, we're going forward 8 years, I think.
Yeah, big jump this time.
From Snake Eyes to The Wicker Man. It's our biggest jump yet. Almost a decade. So we're definitely entering a new era of Cage, aren't we? We're entering that questionable era, aren't we?
Yeah.
Don't worry, there's no left behinds in this season. But yeah, Matt will be delighted to know our new friend Matt, friend of the podcast.
We're so sorry.
I'm very sorry. You messaged me the other day and said, I hope you're not doing The Wicker Man. We are.
Ruh-roh. I think we're going to have to issue apologies all round.
Nah.
Well, no, our listeners don't have to watch it.
No, they don't.
You guys are fine.
But listen to the show, though.
Yeah.
Listen to the show. Yeah, watch it, don't watch it. If you've seen it before, probably don't bother watching it again.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I wouldn't.
Or do. Like, do people like this movie now? Is it one of those that people kind of enjoy ironically?
No.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's going to be a first-time watch for me, so...
First and last.
I don't know, maybe I'm going to love it.